Good morning and welcome back to the Explicit Measures Podcast with Tommy, Seth, and Mike. Hello, everyone, and good morning.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning. Hopefully you can see me sporting my first Chicago Bears since we're actually with a winning record. So,
oh man, we're gonna need to really seriously consider if you even need to be on this podcast anymore.
Are you just a fair weather fan then? Like, if it's only because they started winning?
Do Packer fans look down on Chicago fans, or do they look on them with pity? Like they're there.
What's a Bear fan? They don't even acknowledge you.
I feel like it's a little funny. Like, oh, look at him. He made a pass. That's great.
I mean, there is a phrase, the Bears still suck. And then that's what you hear. That no normal person would just make that up randomly.
Man, Mike.
Unless you were 2 hours north or 3 hours north.
To be honest, I'm not really into the sports stuff that much. I'm not really into it that much.
Yeah.
I'm excited to see the teams play this year.
Yeah.
I think they're too. I think the Bears have turned the corner. Hopefully,
it will be a good game,
and you'll hang on to this quarterback for more than a year or two.
That's and that's new. But I will tell you, if I'm a little stressed out today, it's and I'll only say it on this podcast unless we get to the World Series. The Yankees are 2 games away from the World Series, and this is a big deal.
It's because they spend so much money on their players. I mean, that's a bottom line.
Being married and the Yankees in the World Series have never overlapped yet, and I made my wife acutely aware of this.
I don't know how those two things are supposed to correlate, though.
Yeah.
Oh, it's going to affect their relationship. It's going to affect your relationship.
Hopefully in a good way.
Wow. Well, depending on how they do. It's performance-based.
You might go more broke. Who knows? There's going to be lots of random memorabilia things in the house that you're like, what are we doing? This does not fit the decor of the couch and the living room now.
If you listen closely in a Wisconsin night outside and the Yankees give up a home run, you're going to be able to hear
it. Oh, that's funny.
Tommy's neighbors love him during this time of year.
Yes, exactly right. Let's jump into our main topic today. Let's just talk about our main topic. Today, our main topic is going to be just kind of unpacking more things about domains, tags, and workspaces. And interestingly, tags is a new feature that have just come out. You can tag all kinds of items inside the Microsoft ecosystem now inside Fabric. You can tag a report. You can now tag a semantic model. Can you tag a workspace as well? I think you can add tags to workspaces too, right? No.
I think it's only artifacts.
Okay, maybe just artifacts. But I think with the proliferation of the amount of things you can create, tagging seems like a helpful way of also giving you the ability to find and filter down things that you care about. All right. With that, we'll jump over to our news items. So we do have a really exciting October summary show up from Microsoft. So desktop has just landed. We've got a new version of Power BI Desktop. To be honest, this may not go over very well for your guys' standpoint, but I feel like with the things are starting to get settled, I think, in the Microsoft space. Like if you look at like Fabric as a whole, in addition to what's coming out for Power BI. Now, granted, we are the Power BI, that's where we came from. That's what we started in, the Power BI side of things. But I really like all this Fabric stuff they're creating. And to me, there's a really neat excitement. I feel excited about all the things in Fabric like I did when first Power BI came out. Every week, there's tons of it. I mean, every month, there's updates all over the place. You're getting new features. The experiences are getting better. It's getting faster. The native execution engine has now been announced inside Spark. I mean, there's been all these other rich experiences that Microsoft is developing and pushing out. And I'm getting excited. I don't think I've been excited about development from Power BI for a while. It felt very stagnant for a bit. I think that was because they were getting things like settled. And now that the core rebuild or the core rework has happened, we're now starting to seem like get more features out. That's just my impression. You guys feel the same way?
I reluctantly agree. I remember when like Drill Through came out for the first time. I think it was like at the Data Insight Summit.
And then goals, which then became metrics, and then now goals.
And yes. And I remember specifically out loud telling someone, "Oh, did you see this new update? This is awesome!" and wanting desperately to try it out like immediately.
Yeah.
And yeah, we haven't seen a lot on desktop, and I bet you next year, 2 years, we're going to see the whole cycle. Like because I think Microsoft.
But desktop got some big stuff. Like we got some live edit mode in desktop from the. That's pretty cool. Like dark mode. Come on, that's a big change. That's going to make everyone's life better.
It's going to make people's better, but this is not where I'm like, I have to do this now. And you're right, with the fabric stuff, I'm like, with they're doing that now. It's like, okay, I got to see that. I got to test that out. I got to see what it is.
I agree.
So 100%.
Okay, so one of the things that came out that's more semantic model related is now info.view functions that just came out. So you can now run a info view columns, measures, relationships, and tables. And all of those items can be used in, I believe, a calculated table. So you can calculate a table, use this measure, and it documents all of your measures, columns, and relationships in the model as part of the model. And when you refresh your model, it automatically gets all the new definitions of things automatically in your model. I mean, make the model be its own documentation. That makes total sense to me.
Yeah, there's actually, I would encourage people to go searching online. I've seen multiple different solutions coming through my LinkedIn feed lately, where people have already built out full solutions on how to like basically just auto document your model, which huge time saver. Yeah. So I got to lean into that one a little bit, because that's one of those places where, Mike, you could totally automate the outputs and keep documentation refreshed and up to date, just because like it's so easy, right? It's either part of of your report, or the solution's really easy to build on top of things. So that's awesome.
I'm going to look at that one. That's something that will change how I build things, I think.
Yeah. It's going to be a macro and Tableau editor, that's for sure. But we're also seeing our third new lightning bolt visual or new visual come out. And it's another slicer.
What does that tell you, though?
People love filtering.
People love slicers. Well, to be frankly honest, right? This is where things get really. I think of this from a developer standpoint, right? When I'm a developer looking at what's happening inside these visuals, it's very difficult to move the tech forward and have the same visual support all the old features and then support all the new features with new style or properties or how you handle the data in the visual. It's difficult to have full backwards capabilities and then add all these new things as well. So I really do. I mean, I like the fact that Microsoft's building a lot of extra visuals. I feel like we're going to get this really big pile of just lightning visuals. And I'm like, when are you going to actually like deprecate the old things and get rid of them? Or just does the new thing always do all the old? So we're starting to create a little bit of confusion around, okay, now I have 3 different slicers. Which one should I really be using to actually make a slicer that I want to do things with?
And I mean, that's actually really bad.
I love the fact that they're choosing lightning bolts, because their descriptions are like,
list slicer.
We don't recommend using it in production currently. However, this is an excellent opportunity to experience the capabilities of the new slicer. It's like, is that because I'm going to get bit? Like I'll get zapped, like in prod, like, oop, it's not working.
May shock your mouse. Careful.
It's only when we take off the lightning bolt.
Yeah.
Are all of them like that? Or do all of them have that kind of note on there?
It's the same lightning bolt from Data Flows. Accelerated.
No, I know the lightning bolt, but do they all have the disclaimer of like, hey, lightning bolt means careful, don't use in production, it may break something.
I'd have to look at it, but this one certainly does have that disclaimer.
I don't think it's on the cards with the lightning bolt.
Yeah. Speaking of the ambiguity or ambiguousness between the like normal visuals and these new ones, are you using the new card by default? The new card KPI, or are you using the normal one? Because I still use the normal one because I know that's the one is the standard. I haven't checked, I know it initially came out with limitations, and I'm not going back every week to check. Oh, did they now make this in GA? Because it's the advanced version. And if you want to nudge people's behavior, just rip the Band-Aid.
Yeah.
I will say the new card visual, I do use that one. And I actually really like it from the idea that I can add 3 or 4 measures. It's more efficient to the model. So if I do have a 3 or 4 card KPI thing, it does act like individual cards on the page. And that's really what I want. I really want like a visual that has the numbers as a card, and I just keep adding measures to it. And the nice part is it runs a single query back to the back end to get that stuff. So these are, I have seen reports where people are trying to build a more elaborate card, and in doing so, they add like 8 visuals together to make one card. Like there's a picture, there's an icon, there's a little line chart, like all these really cool things, but it's still just a single card. And I think the fact that we're able to do more of this with a single visual is definitely the right approach. One, it makes my report faster. It's more complicated to stylize that one visual, but it gives you, I think, a lot more capability to like, I don't know. It's the right approach. To me, it's the right approach, right? It's what we should be doing. We should be making visuals that can do more things, as opposed to like the opposite effect of like, you always are limited in that visual space. Anything else that stood out to you on the October blog?
No, but I do really want to talk about Johnny W's point in the chat.
Yeah,
it kind of speaks to the preview feature proliferation. He comments, does anyone think Microsoft should start finishing the proliferation of preview features because it's becoming a massive bugbear? And it's interesting because we talk about like what the minimum viable product is for something and to get out the door, and then tech debt, right? Like you have something that you've got to streamline or make better or whatever. However, would it ever be acceptable for your people, your organizations, to put something out with known bugs? Where you're like, hey, we're feature complete for the customer, but we already know this stuff doesn't work, or we know 25% of the time it could fail. Because like if I look at this,
what's the alternative though?
Well, but that's what I'm saying. But I guess the alternative is,
would you rather them do 4 releases a year and that's all you get?
Sure.
Or ship the CD-ROM.
But I guess the follow up to that is his second point, which is, what about the field parameters that are still in preview? Like, are you treating that feature with known bugs like you accomplished it, and the rest is tech debt, which means it just falls into this backlog way behind all these other preview features, and now it's not as useful because people aren't going to put it in production? Or are you keeping it as a priority, and it's only because you couldn't release the full feature set, but you wanted to get it out the door, and the next stuff is coming in the next release? That I'd be okay with. But what is the difference between some of these features that we see coming out that have this disclaimer of like, use at your own risk, with when we can actually like rely on them, right? Because they're
You're asking a great question. It's
a great
question.
Useful to me right now. And you're not going to get the type of adoption, because if this is kind of like let's see who uses it and then we'll finish it, you're not going to get the adoption that would let you get those metrics, because people are only going to test it on the side and you won't get full-fledged adoption. So to the point that you guys just talked about, hey, have you used card visuals, or, oh, well, it was buggy and I haven't gone back to stay up to date, right? But now we're in this cycle all the time where it's like, well, I validated it when it came out and I read disclaimers, don't use it. I'm moving on, and it's like, oh yeah, 6 months later, or not long, but 3 months later, I could have been using this feature, but because when I evaluated it, it wasn't fit for my purposes yet. Let's check it again, right? I think there's multiple points I'm trying to make in that whole stream. But I thought it was an interesting poke.
Let me raise my hand. I'm gonna say something real quick, and then I really want to hear your comment too, Tommy. I think this is a very hard game to play. I think Johnny, you make a great point here. As I'm looking at this, on one hand, app development is hard, and the size of Microsoft and this team now around Fabric and Power BI is probably massive now at this point. You've got so many teams going so many different directions, trying to figure out what's useful and what's not useful. And I know Microsoft, and I think particularly Satya, is very much driving the company down. We use metrics to decide what things move forward, and so there's instrumenting on the tool. They know they know which features are being used, which ones are not. I mean, that's that's good design of any product, right? You want to see what people are using. To your point though, Seth, if something's been out for 6 months and there's no major hiccups, issues, bugs, why not just keep it the way it is and not quote unquote finish it and just say, okay, we've done it for 6 months. It works fairly well. We're not getting any major bugs back from it. We're just going to release it as is and then bring in new features or ask for more feedback around, like all these other things. I think this is very hard to do because as a developer or as a team that's developing features, you put out things you think customers want, you do your homework, but you really rely on as I'm learning this, in Microsoft, each program PM, principal manager, it's really they're responsible to get the feature dialed right. And even, if you think about the whole of all the people who use Power BI, is this feature intended to be used by every single person who's creating content? Is it easy to jump in and use and learn how to do the feature? You may have the most amazing feature, but if no one knows about your feature, or it hasn't been promoted well by the community, hasn't really been picked up, it's not solving like a major problem, you may not get the usage you want, but it's still functionally useful to building those report pieces. So maybe to your point, Seth, like it's hard to balance that gauge of like, okay, something's in preview, it's in preview for so long, we haven't had any other major bugs with it. Well, that feature, I think, to your point, should just get released as is. Okay, now it's regular, right? It's ready to be used. We're going to support it regardless. I think preview is just of the idea of if Microsoft ever wanted to make a major change to it or break something in it, they can. And because they can be like, oh, it was in preview. Like we're not going to take ownership of that feature so much. So it's a fine line.
And Mike, that's a really good point because unfortunately, I think it's the playground that we're playing in too. You don't like this, go to Google. They're doing the same thing. You don't like this, go to ChatGPT. They're doing the same thing. I'm looking at my computer and I have Teams and Outlook and they're still in preview too. And I think a lot of it too, especially with Microsoft, they don't have a user group case study team. A lot of the preview could be AKA, do you like it? If you like it, then we'll really focus on this and put a lot of time. But this is the way they have one versus competition, but two, Data Marts is a great example. That was preview. I don't know if it ever went to GA, but it lost a lot of steam. It didn't get a lot of usage. But how would Microsoft know that unless they actually put something out there to say, we're just bringing this out there. We want to see, we're already spending a lot of risk and time and money on this product or this feature. And now we're going to see people actually going to use it.
I think after the fact, Johnny's like, I just derailed the guys again, which you probably did. But I do like his other idea of like, we should make that a podcast. We should go through and look at the GA features that are still like out in preview.
Yes.
And do an episode around kill it or complete it. Right. Like,
oh, I like it.
That's great.
Write it down, Tommy. Write it down. We got to get a list.
I'm already writing it down.
Complete it. Yep. Or just mark it done. Just call it done. Like, fine. You're not going to add. Yeah. So to your point though, like,
we'll push it. Get it into like get us out of preview, please.
Yeah, totally. And again, this is probably also another thing that's challenging too, right? The team's always trying to build great things. They're listening to customer feedback. It gets, the more people that use your product, the harder it is to get everyone happy with what you're building. Yeah. And you really have to have this very clean 100%. Vision of like where you're going. And so as I've learned this, the PMs, having a great PM on your area is like really good to have. Like that really can drive a feature, and you can see which parts of the product have strong PMs because the stuff that they build and comes out from their team is like the community loves it. It's dialed. It's the right things. And so I think it really shows, depending on like, as the team grows, you're going to get parts of the tool that are going to be more polished than others just because they have the right vision of that feature coming right out of the gate. Mm. All right. There's a couple other announcements. I do just want to pay some homage to them because I think we should talk about them. One is the announcement of retirement of real-time streaming in Power BI. So beginning October 31st, which is not very long away, creation of new real-time semantic models will no longer be supported. Beginning October 31st on 2027, so 3 years out, existing real-time semantic models will be retired and no longer supported. So just FYI, that's coming. The announcement was made on the blog on the 15th, so pay attention. And then the other note here we'll just quickly touch on is a feature that I love. Again, this is a PM that's just crushing it. Rui Romano is just, he knows what he's doing. The features I'm excited about. Everything he's building, I'm like, this is on point for me. It really impacts my workload, like what I do. Live edit of direct lake models now in Power BI Desktop. And I'm going to say it again, like the service does so many things for me. I can do so many things in the service. Desktop is becoming the pro tool. It's not just for building reports anymore. It's going to be like, you got this DAX query view thing. They've announced in Tyndall Editor, and we can now do the edits remotely from, it's getting pretty stinking cool. So I'm not sure. I feel like I know where the vision's going on this one. And Desktop is getting a lot more investment on like really rich stuff for the pro developer.
You're making this a new episode machine. I disagree so much with that statement, but we'll save that. So
okay, all right. Tommy's over here squirming in his chair.
I'm just putting episodes in, like, oh, that's a topic.
That's a topic. But we're gonna argue about that one for sure. Yes, exactly. Yes, awesome. Johnny just ripping out the preview features here. So Tommy, keep an eye on the chat here and write down all of Johnny's comments around all the features in preview that he's just roasting right now and that need to be talked about as a full episode. Awesome.
We'll save them. Alex, I'll send you, or Mr. Johnny, I'll send you my email so you can send it directly.
Tee him up. Tommy's gonna have 100 emails of all these things that Johnny wants to deal with. Awesome. Well, okay, enough of the pre-talk. We did a lot of kind of news and announcements here. I hope that was kind of fun. There's a lot of new things coming out, so I hope you're excited. Go read the blog. That's for sure a thing you should do. I'll go slap all these items inside the chat window. That way you have them, and they'll also be in the description as well if you want to check that out additionally. All right, enough said. Moving on over. Main topic for today. Our main topic today is going to be talking about the domains, tags, and how that relationship kind of works with our workspaces. So Tommy, maybe kick us off here. Where are you thinking we're going to go with this conversation? Maybe give us a couple initial talking points.
Yeah, so Microsoft just released Fabric tags, which allows us to categorize or put really any label.
Is it in preview?
It's in preview. It's of course it's in preview.
Okay,
so
just checking.
I think that goes without saying. Fabric's in GA, but tags on any artifact in any workspace. I can put on a report, to your point, a semantic model, a notebook, any artifact that exists in Fabric, I can label it with a tag. But we also have domains, and domains are overreaching part of over a workspace, over the content. And again, with that, we also have workspaces. So now we have 3 pieces of governance around a Microsoft team or a team that's working in business intelligence around categorization, organization, and security, where I think there's a few questions here now on who's going to own what, where do the new labels and tags and domains come from, and where do you get started actually getting something structured out for a team? Because this could easily become a mess in an organization of all these names and domains and tags. So where do we go from here with now 3 layers of governance, 3 layers of security of a Microsoft team or a business intelligence team? And I think that's kind of where I wanted to kick off and see what you guys think.
Yeah, I think these are really interesting features here. And as I've been kind of diving into like who can make a domain, how are domains created, one thing I'll just note, we just did a live session on training.tips around what is semantic link. One thing I'll just say, just for, dude, like, semantic link is incredible. It is, if you don't know what semantic link is doing and you're not out there trying to play with it in a notebook, and if you use, let me say it this way, if you use Fabric and you are starting to learn how to do notebooks, semantic link is awesome. It does so much stuff that you just need to know how to use. It's going to be the most useful tool you have. I'm pretty sure I'm pretty good at calling features. I'm pretty good. I'm pretty sure semantic link labs is going to be the tool everyone needs to learn and use, because it can pretty much do every single other tool's work for you and more. So, dude, it's awesome. Anyways, that being said, I was playing around with semantic link, and what you can do in semantic link, you can create domains. You can group users. You can ask for all the workspaces that live inside a domain. There's control around this. So I really like the idea of domains. I think domains is an underused feature. And I think from an organizational standpoint, if you think about what happens with your people and your company versus how does it mirror the behavior inside PowerBI.com, you kind of need to mirror your organizational structure into PowerBI.com at some level. I think it's a better way to govern. I think as your team grows in size and you're going to educate your team about who can administer what things, I think more and more there's going to be features that you're going to delegate to subject matter experts or leads in certain departments or certain domains. I think that's going to be very helpful because as you think about how to scale the business, we need this federated approach. There needs to be a central team figuring things out, but all these other teams need to use it. So I like domains. Tags, on the other hand, seems interesting to me. I think they will be useful. But the thing I find funny about tags is you make tags, you can't just make them as a user. Only the admin can make a tag and create it at the admin level. And so you can have tags made, let's say you want to say, I'm going to use tags for bronze, silver, and gold, or I want to use tags by department. I think there's a lot more flexibility with this tagging element of things. Interesting, but I'm not sure how I would govern it yet, or what's the right, it's too new to me to be like, what's the best way to do it or use these things? I think I need to listen to the community and figure out proper use cases of where we should be using these tag things. So tags to me feel a little bit more flexible. It definitely helps me find things, but what's really the output there? Does that make sense what I'm saying?
So
which part?
All of it. All of it makes sense.
Yeah,
all
it
of
does.
it.
I mean, but both of these, I think, are in the administration space or the group space, the space of COE, the people in charge of the environment, etc. Because and what I mean by that is the setup, right? So you're talking about domains, the domain structure of the data mesh is essentially you're putting the owners of the data in the area, and a lot of times that's just the business unit, right? So if that's where the data for that organization lives, and then that's shared with other parts, like that's makes a ton of sense, right? Whether that's owned by the same team and you're just segmenting it out, or they're actually the engineers and the owners of the data and all the things, like the structure is there that supports that. And yes, that's what I think domains are for. On the polar opposite side of that, though, I think the audience for tags is completely different, right? Domains is the admin thing, and where everybody who's doing stuff on the engineering and the data itself, like they all play in the area, and that's the ownership levels, and they know that. On the flip side, as you're building the artifacts that the business is going to use, how do people discover the data in those domains or across the organization? And I think that's why you do have, why having heavy control around tags is a good thing, because you don't want it to be the Wild West of
I agree.
Everybody building stuff, right? It's the admins or the special permission that can say, hey, this, if there are special initiatives within the organization and we need to start tagging a bunch of stuff for fast reference.
Yeah. There's PII data and something, like you got to tag it so we can go find it. Like,
right.
Or maybe there's an
there's
an automated process.
That and I thought we talked about this once in another podcast, but that dictionary or the labeling of what's acceptable to be used in those tags, and how you categorize the lineage of what is drawn out so that it's easily searchable for the organization. And then what you're passing out to the organization is, hey, this is the booklet of where you're going to go for looking for commercial or sales information, right? Here's the tags that
I like
are
what
important.
You said there.
And then they can go use the search features within the Fabric ecosystem and find what they're permission to see,
And I think that's a major point. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, before we move on to another point, I just want to kind of hang on your point there for a moment, Seth. Right now, when you create a tag, you only have the name of the tag. Seth, you added so Microsoft, if you're listening, all one of you, please add descriptions and the ability for us to put rich text descriptions with a tag, because a tag is good, but if I just have a tag that just says bronze, silver, what does that mean? Where should I use it? If there's a tag called PII, why is it there? I understand that it's just a tag on top of something, but as an admin, if you're letting admins or people build these things, you should give us the ability to have more descriptions around where to use it. How is there a description with it, so that when someone's in the app and they see, hey, there's a tag here. Oh, if I hover that tag, the tooltip shows up. this data has sensitive information in it. This may have contained da 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 da. For more information, click here, and then it could go to a documentation page that we set up in our Center of Excellence or community practice that has a better description of what's our policy on tags, who sets them up, how do you request a new tag. I mean, this is the same kind of process that I think we're going to need to eventually build for, like we do with workspace requests, right? Some companies don't let you create them. They're going to lock that down. Okay, but if you're going to do it, at least give us a process by which we can go ask or request or fill out a form to go get a workspace created based on a business need. Sorry, I didn't mean to go down that route, but I think that was a really relevant point there.
I like that because I thought you were going to say Microsoft gives colors. I'm like, I can go with that. Give us tag colors. I mean, but no, well,
not wrong.
No, but I think both of your points are very important here because when we're dealing with this type of administration or governance, we're not just dealing with an API or a feature enablement. We're dealing with culture and not just data culture because we're dealing with language. And now we have words, both with domains and tags that need to have meaning. Trust me, take it from if you've ever worked in a Confluence space and anyone can add their own labels to a page. It gets very disorganized very quickly, especially when we're dealing with these artifacts. To your point, it could be bronze, silver, gold. It could be a department based. It could be security based. It could be enablement based. All the different ways the way you're going to roll out tags is going to be important to me. Is I don't want to say mission critical, but I am closer to that than I'm not. And the reason I say that is because doing this wrong, you're just going to have tags that have no meaning at all. And the goal of tags, the goal of domains is it has some association with the word. It has some meaning. If you're going to have domains, if you're going to do it right, it has some meaning to something that can be associated by another human in that organization. So when we're dealing with domains, especially too, if you're just randomly creating domains and you're randomly creating tags, then they have no meaning in the organization.
Yeah, I mean, to get a ton of use out of this, I guess what I would like to see in the future is I'll frame this in not a gap, right? Just a feature improvement.
Yeah, it's in preview. It's coming down the road, right?
If
that was a jab.
Tagging, creating tags, I can understand controlling. Assigning tags is not, right? So what I don't see is if this is going to work effectively within the organization, like what are the tags people can use? And I don't see that as innately like something that stands out to me, like what can I apply? And then like understanding how many of my processes or artifacts in my system are tagged, right? Like where's my dictionary for the wider audience of things that they could leverage, and how do I understand the usage of a tag in the organization? Because if it's not doing what I would assume, right, and not much is getting associated to it, do we need to modify it? The tag's not getting searched, right? Like that's if the purpose is for finding and utilizing data in the organization, I would love to understand how people are getting value from what we created, as opposed to it just being, something that's untraceable or untrackable, but yet is supposed to be valuable. How do I measure that what we created was a good thing?
And that's exactly where I would start. I would start with, just like we know what's the purpose of a workspace. And if you were to break that down to the most basic fundamental definition, I think we can all have a very similar definition. And I think we're getting closer with domains, but I don't think we're there yet where we'd have a universal definition of the purpose of a domain. And I think before we start releasing tags, it's the same thing. What's the purpose of having the tag? What's the purpose of the tag before we actually start producing this and allowing people to start using them?
Let me also give us some other parts here. I think I really like where you guys are going with this one. I also think the feature it needs, so for tags specifically, I think this is something that makes sense to delegate to domains or people inside domains. So I think there's a subset of your organization where, we have this idea of, okay, I'm an admin of Power BI, but we have a handful of workspaces that someone needs to administer. Call it the sales team, the ops team, right? They're going to build their own stuff. So they're going to have a collection of workspaces that they're going to need to use around their items. I think there's the idea of when we have set the policies and we kind of give some understanding around what tags mean, right? I think we need a little bit more metadata about what is a tag, who's the owner of it, There's some more, I think, information about those tagging elements. But I think at the end of the day, it'd be really nice to delegate that to that same team and say, look, there's only one person on your team who can make your own tags, but that department should figure out what tags make sense to them. I think central IT doesn't need to have their hands involved in every single tag. I mean, to me, it feels like domains. Yeah, central IT is going to be helping out building domains because that's like a more alignment to your organization. Tags feel like something you would want to delegate to smaller teams and say, okay, look, these teams can make their own tags for what's relevant to them. Another thing I'd like to see here is Semantic Link Labs should allow you to scan through all your workspaces or your reports, and you should be able to take metadata out of everything and say, should there be auto tagging of things? Should we run scripts that we say, look, as corporate, we are going to go through and look for names of columns or certain measures or other things in here that we're saying, okay, if we see this kind of data, we should tag this as sales. If we see this kind of data, we should tag this as financial. Something that's generic. So I think there needs to be something that that's going to help you automate the addition of tags that we think are going to be most relevant for people when we're using our system, right? Again, it'll be, if you add some more automation there, the businesses or companies can figure out the best way to utilize the tags. And I don't see anything today in Semantic Labs around tags.
But the thing that strikes me is like this just has to be, tags have to be a managed entity in order to be useful.
Yes.
Like it's not a set it and forget it kind of thing.
No.
And that's what I don't like in the initial implementation here is just like, okay, I can create the thing and I can associate it. Okay, great. But there's a lot more to making sure that we're not just creating the next set of documentation. That's great. And all the effort was really worthwhile for the 2-month project that we did it. And then all of a sudden it goes dark. Like nobody updates it. It's not valuable. Like now it's confusing. Now people are wading through like, well, is this artifact or like, what
How
is,
do I trust it? It's certified, but doesn't have a tag. What does that mean?
That's my point. But at the same time, and that's why I haven't been part of an organization that's successfully deployed a data dictionary or a method whereby end users can easily find the information that they need, which is ideally where tagging would come in, right? You're saying this is the artifact that's important. Like when you search for this is where you want to land, and that should be a managed thing.
So there's an interesting question, Seth. Is the purpose of the tag or where we're going here for data catalog? I don't know, because Mike, you said something I don't like, and the only reason I don't like it is because you were 100% right. Because I didn't like it because it makes a lot of sense here. Where right now tags are a universal definition. I create a tag from the admin; it's available to anyone.
It's fine.
But you're probably dealing with scenarios, and more often than not, the situation is it's going to be more domain specific than it is going to be universally defined. So
yes.
And I think we're not there with,
and it's like team. It's like I would even maybe not even use domains. Domains may be a bit too big of a team. Like it may be just team specific. Like maybe I'm in engineering and I have a small team in a larger engineering organization, or maybe I'm one team in the quality org and I have like 10 people that were. All I want to do is figure out, okay, this content was relevant for me. Here's a tag that makes sense to my team. There's something in there that you may want to tag for that team.
But it's discoverable to everybody, right?
Exactly.
And that's where I do.
No,
but here's the thing.
Now, now it is.
To me,
it's not. You look. It's tagged to the item, right?
Right, but if I now have a tag, if I'm trying to like add a new tag, that tag's discoverable, not necessarily the.
Oh, yes, I see.
Right.
Okay,
so
sorry. I misread what you said.
What I would drive at is like call it admins, but it's more like the COE conversation. The central group that would be creating tags, I think, should be working with whatever structure you have set up in Fabric for the different groups, right? So if you have domains and those are the different groups, like
the same team of people.
What's important, I think, is establishing how within the entire organization you want the tagging system to work.
Yes.
So that for any end user, it's a consistent experience as opposed to mass confusion right out of the gate, which it would be. Right.
Totally
that's why I do like the fact that it's only very small subset or one person can create them. The content owners or the different groups can assign them. Right. But I'm okay with that approach where it's like, hey, you don't have control to do that because you have this should be a very useful tool. And I don't agree with the fact that you should be able to create all these little things in your own team unless you can limit the view of only those tags to your team. And I don't see that capability yet.
I think this is another thing that's interesting to me, and I like your point there, Seth, as well. That's a great point. I agree with it. One thing that I think is missing in the admin portal for tags is I can't see all the items that have been tagged a certain way. So there needs to be more, in my opinion, as if you're going to create all these tags, the whole point is you have a whole bunch of things that have a tag on them. Therefore, I should be able to go back into a portal and say, for this tag, produce to me the list of all the items, workspaces, the things that are attached to that tag. And then I can decide from an admin standpoint, again, if you're making this all center controlled through the central place, I need to see all the items attached to it. I need to be able to kick things out or add things on the fly inside the tagging screen, inside the admin portal, or provide me automation to allow me to do that as well. So those are the things that we're going to need to get to.
And maybe part of that is okay, well, you see what is being used when you search for it.
And you're dealing with access issues. And,
right. So, but the admin would have access to everything, But at the same time, I suppose that infers usage. But I would still like to know how many people are searching or finding that tag, right?
So I think we've dealt with a lot of the inefficiencies and the limitations of tags today, unless we have some more. What I like to do, because we're solution based, right? We like to think of answers to problems, and we like to think of problems too. So if you don't mind, I would like to kind of transition here and talk about just a few quick questions on some scenarios on how we're going to deal with tags and domains as it is in the state today.
Okay.
Unless we want to put that in the parking lot and you had something else you wanted to kind of deal with.
I think it's good to go to that one. I don't have any other things around tagging so far.
So let's start with the basic one. Are tags a gotta tag them all type scenario?
And it's like Pokemon. Yeah, for sure it
is. Is it like, you like that? I like the little catch there. So
I see what you did there.
I'm glad you picked up what I put down. So, I think that's the first question I was dealing with. Are we trying to tag, if in the world that we're in today, from a universal point of view, are we going to try to, everything should have a tag on it? Or is it very much a limited basis on what type of artifact or item?
Not sure how I feel on this one. I don't think everything needs to be, right now, the way I'm looking at tagging is I'm looking at tagging thinking that it's just a more helpful way to search for a group of things that are similar. Is what I'm and it's crossed. It's not just one workspace, it's across any workspace, anywhere you're so look, these are, and you think about all the things that you have access to, right? I'm going to have hundreds, thousands of reports, semantic models, tables, lake houses, things I have access to. I'm an admin of stuff. So I see a ton of items in my list. How do I quickly get down to the things that I'm either working on right now or a specific topic area? How do I get to that information? I think when you start looking at the proliferation of items inside Fabric, this is supposed to help with some of that.
Right.
And maybe that's where I'm saying, look, I don't want to search just for a pipeline. I want to search for anything that's data engineering related. And so and this is where I think to your point earlier, Tommy, tags matter, words matter here. Because if I say this is data engineering activities, these are the kind of things I'm tagging as data engineering. It could be a real-time streaming pipeline. It could be ingesting data through Kusto. It could be work that we say this is all tagged for the data engineers. And then if I'm that role of person, I could go find those things.
Yeah, I think I would lean on focusing on the audience that tags are I would think designed for. And that's the people that are searching for content that would be available to them, right? Or that they would need. So if I'm going to start rolling it out, it's only on the objects. And if you think about the entire ecosystem of what's being developed and built within a Fabric environment, it's all the engineering artifacts. It's not everything I need to tag. I don't think I'm trying to tag everything for engineers because they know how to navigate the system, and they should certainly know how to plug into the right spots for all of the information. It's the people who don't know, right? It's the final curated or gold standard or certified tables or models or whatever the case may be.
But I have certified
in
for
the
that.
ecosystem. I get it, but I think it's a different set of users, right? The ones that need direct access to data predominantly, where I would see tagging saying like, hey, commercial sales, whatever, or this is the view of information that is relevant to you that we're spinning off, or whatever. I mean, there's a million different scenarios of data needs that people have.
Yeah.
And tagging helps them navigate an environment that they're not actively, engaged with every day, I think.
You want to remove redundancy. You don't want to say, hey, where are all the notebooks? Oh, under the notebook tag. That's which you could definitely see happening too. But I mean, so that's a good point though too, Seth, where what would those tags then be for those more, call them basic users, more less experienced users? What kind of tags are we putting on that? If
I don't know yet.
If
I don't
they're
think I don't know if I'm thinking like maybe there's some like bronze, silver, gold level things that you're using to help with that. Maybe because maybe you're thinking I want to talk about, maybe that's where I'm creating a bronze lake house. I'm creating a bronze pipeline that's loading the data in, right? This is the silver items, right? This is the notebook that's used to go help build things in silver. Part of this to me is like I can when I have when I lack the ability to figure out how to delineate which type of activities I'm doing on items, what happens is the name of the item gets longer and more elaborate based on, right? I mean, if I'm doing a bronze lake house, it's going to be bronze lake house, right? I'm not using a tag that says lake house 1, lake house 2, lake house 3. Like I'm to me, this is a potential for saying I want to start using these things, and I want to use tagging to start delineating other features of this workspace or item or whatever that then I don't need to carry through the name of the item. And maybe this is where this is coming from. If you use tags, I don't need to have all this extra dev, test, prod designation on everything. I could just call it what it is. It's the bronze lake house. And then when I move between environments, I just tag them the right way. And then, if I'm searching for all this stuff and I can see it, it's one thing that shows up. If I'm looking for things that are prod, boom, add the tag of prod, boom. Now everything that's report based, all the prod stuff shows up. Like, so maybe it's that kind of idea of like, we're taking away, the name of the object can only be so long until it starts turning into an ellipsis. Right. Yeah. And so maybe this is a part of that solution is I can get, I use the name to help me search for stuff. And maybe this is what I'm going to replace that with a little bit is, okay, what are the most common acronyms in my names that I don't want to use anymore? Let's just make tags for them. And that becomes part of your tagging system. And
in that state, that makes a lot of sense because it also removes.
Of course it does.
All right.
Sorry, just kidding. That was
it eliminates the point that Seth initially made about the data catalog, where there's no need here now, or there's not the critical need to we need to catalog every tag and then what's associated with this.
Correct.
Because you're right, the names, man. We're like BRNZ-MKT. It's a bronze marketing lake house.
Take away all the vowels because I don't have enough characters to see the whole thing. So we're now using less letters in the name just to get LKE, right? That's the lake. Now we're dropping letters just so we have enough designation to add the dev, the test, the prod, the 01, the 02 version on things. Maybe we shouldn't be doing that. Maybe we should be using tags for some of that stuff.
I think that's in my mind that's like too much because you already have I think plenty of naming standards and of how you go build things that I guess that just isn't something that I would utilize tags for because it's over tagging and I guess to almost reinforce my point, and I don't know if it's a current limitation or by design, but I would argue probably by design is a tenant can only have 10,000 tags. So you're not going to be able to tag every single object from the dev perspective, right? Like what you're describing is I'm going to tag everything. And then when I click dev, all my dev objects are going to come up, right? There's probably a lot more than 10,000 objects in in large organizations.
10,000.
No, that I know
trying to
there
go through that.
But this is my point, though. This is where automation comes over, right? So that's where, I mean, the tags are centrally managed.
But at what point is your list of tags so prohibitively long that everybody's just like, why did we do this?
Again, this is what I think
quickly.
This is the balance that we're gonna have to work through. We're gonna have to like work through what the balance of that looks like. I don't know. Like it's so new. I don't think we're there yet. I'm not sure if we really understand where's the best use cases to use tags for. I think it's a good idea. I think it's a neat feature. I think it helps me filter down things just like Domain does. Now it's just a matter of like, is it just kind of one of these features that stays in preview for a couple long years, or are we gonna finish it out?
I don't know, but like if I'm still sticking to like the use case of the audience that can access my data but just doesn't know enough about how to, right? Where I could utilize that and say, hey, you're not the domain owners, right? Or you're this group that we've developed a bunch of data sets for. And rather than pointing people to the right locations all the time, I could create a tag that's just hey, go search this. All of your objects of everything you're going to need are going to show up on that search pane. That's extremely useful to me because that's a shortcut for me to drive into the organization, a useful place for them to get access to the data that they need.
And I think that kind of leads to really my other question I had for you guys is, in its most raw fundamental state that we're in now with tags, could you give me a scenario or something where you would roll it out? And for myself, I'll kind of give an example. I can absolutely see myself pushing for this in a very small way, where I'm not saying we're going to make this a universal adoption, but to your point, Mike, having a bronze, silver, gold, and those are the 3 tags that exist right off the bat. But having that, because that could be a pretty big help when it comes. And then the next thing that you have to solve for immediately after you release the first 3 tags is who has input for the creation of new tags. This is something that I've been thinking about as you guys have been talking. And some of this I'll save, I think, for potentially for another episode. But as we talk about domains too, in this intersection between domains and tags, I am seeing a new role being created, just like we used to have the Power BI champions at organizations, where I'm going to need input from maybe a domain leader. And I don't know if that's something that's already established, if that's been a conversation, but this conversation about universal tagging, because that's the state we're in now. That's the world that we live in. I would allow domain leaders or someone in that capacity to request new tags. We start very basically with 5 tags, like you said, and they're universal, can be applied to anything, data engineering, or it's bronze, or it's silver. That's it. When people ask for new tag, it has to come from a domain leader or someone who owns that domain. And there's a conversation, but the understanding right now that everything's universal. But I think there's absolutely a use case right now for me to get off this computer today and say, hey, let's start rolling out tags in a most basic sense.
I thought of another one. So I guess the end user thing was what struck me, but at the same time, like, is there conflict with tags being admin created for whatever purpose? The one that actually I think also fits into this, but would be one that I would roll out is tagging the items that are going to be the cross collaboration between domains, right? Because the whole point of a domain is the subject matter experts and owners of data that know it best are the ones that own that data. But that doesn't mean that they're the only ones with access to it, right? Really, so can I simplify the interaction between domains by tagging? And I think the answer would be yes, right? If we're looking for this type of information from my domain, here's the set of objects that you would want to plug into that you will have access to because we're sharing them, but it will give you context about what area of our business you're plugging into. And I think that would be extremely important in cross collab of data usage.
I want to go back to Tommy's comment around the whole feeding things up through comments through the domain experts. I agree with your process. I do agree with the process. I think I disagree with the now my organization needs more data culture and more process and people to follow it and understand what the process is so they could get a tag made so they could go use it. So like on that's my other like so so this is where I struggle with the balance of like, how do I govern it versus how do I enable people to use it so it's useful? And that's where I think I struggle here with this. I don't know. Some organizations are going to be great at dropping out a policy and saying, here it is. It's on our community practice. We're going to have our monthly meeting. Boom, here it is. Let's go. Right. Other organizations are going to be like, they're just going to struggle with it. They're just going to be someone decides this is a good idea, on their own in a vacuum. A whole bunch of tags are created and boom, now we got tags all over the place, but really mean nothing. And to your point, Tommy, if there's not because of the way it's being rolled out right now, it's an admin centered only feature. Therefore, it has to have intentionality built into it. To your point, Seth, like, where can I use this? What's the most impact for this? How can I get the users to find the most value out of this feature? Oh yeah, this makes sense. Here's a use case. Cross-domain usage makes sense. Got it. But is that you're thinking about it, but unless someone spends the time to do that and then write it down and make a policy and put it somewhere where people understand and know how it works, we're relying on the data culture and the people. And if anything, I know people are sneaky. They're going to be lazy. They're not going to go. They don't want to like. It is like this is why we have.
Sneaky, sir.
This is why we have bad data and data systems all over the place because people are like they want to save their data a certain way. They hack the system. They put data in where it shouldn't be. It's not named right. We don't have proper controls around clean data in the operational system. And then downstream, we're stuck here at the other end trying to make it ready for reporting. And we're just cleaning stuff all day long. So like we're the janitors of the data world, trying to get everything like, so how we've got to play well in this space so that it's
right. But that like on a theoretical level, that's the whole point of data mesh versus centralized team, because like technically the gripe you have is very real for the vast majority, I think, of us, because that it's just the standard way of thinking about data coming into a central place is you're having to deal with systems of data that are just garbage. But if it's domain driven, then and there's something wrong with the data, it's the domain's problem to fix, not yours. Right. And that's where a lot of business intelligence projects halt up, is where like there's this assumption by the business that data is just fantastic in all these areas. And it couldn't be farther from the truth.
Yes.
And then all of a sudden things start to bottleneck because the business intelligence team is saying, or data engineering are like, guys, this is jacked. Like you've got a lot of work to do to go fix it. And then it's like, now the finger pointing. Now we can't get the reporting we need, and they're blocking things and it's like, well, that's a very different conversation, as opposed to here are our findings. We're helping this domain of business understand how messed up their data is, and the business focus is not on that central team anymore. It's on the domain saying you're not giving them good data. You have to it's your responsibility to put good data in a place that's useful for the organization.
This is so important.
I think that's the separation, or where I think some of what I'm understanding about data mesh theory is you're separating out and making owners of data areas, as opposed to what's been the standard approach, which is we're just believing all this good data is good, and we're bringing it into the central place, and that central team is doing all these things, but things slow down then because they're responsible for fixing it all.
Yeah. This is a great,
I love that.
And I think this is one of the, what you're just talking about there with data mesh and the idea that we need to push out responsibility to individual teams who are either curating or grooming or managing that data. There needs to be and so data is not just a single experts only sport. It's a team sport. Everyone participates in data quality. And I think that's the story I'm hearing. And as I think about Fabric and where Fabric is going, this is accelerating that story more because everyone's a player in the data world. Everyone needs to take ownership of responsibility, and that's a data culture problem.
All of this is a data culture problem. Organizations just don't realize that they have a data problem, and it's not a shared cultural initiative.
Yes.
And that's what data mesh does, is pull that forward and say, data is a central part of our organization, and all of us have responsibility, not to manipulate things on the side in our Excel spreadsheets, but fix them in the core systems so our collective business can use and leverage data. And how do you think AI systems are going to work? Well, all of us need to create clean data and good data in our organization. And I think having tool sets like Fabric, right, Microsoft has like it's a bad word. I was going to say deleveraged, like leverage their tech stack to bring it forward more so more people can play in the space. Is it as easy as like you want to say? No, it's
Much
not,
harder.
right? Like lots of things people need to learn, but at least you're opening the doors for all of the players that know about data to play in the same spaces, and then you can create, I think, better domain, silos, but they're not really a silo. Domain areas of solid quality data that's then accessible to all other parts of the organization.
Awesome. Well, with that, we've gone almost over on time here, so we'll just kind of quickly wrap up things. That was a great final thought there, Seth. And then we'll just kind of give a quick wrap here. Thank you all for listening. This has been a good topic. I didn't think we were going to go down this far on we went down like tags and domains, and all of a sudden we're like, everyone needs responsibility for data. Like
how it typically goes.
That's kind of
know thyself.
Welcome to every episode we do, right? Everything starts with like a technical feature, and we always land on, it's a people and process issue. It's not really the feature at all. It's just people and process.
What's an identity?
So anyways, thank you very much for listening. I hope this is going to help you unpack where tags fit in your organization. Just some thoughts from us as we are trying to unpack what they mean, how we use them, where's the best place to utilize them. It sounds like you're going to need to, again, continue to focus on your center of excellence and your community of practice. This is one of those things I think you're going to really unpack for your team and figure out what is going to work for your organization. And also, we'd love to see more people blogging about this. If tags are something you're going to use, if there's features missing from tags, go blog stuff. Let us know in the comments. We would love to talk about those things as well in a future episode. With that being said, we don't really ask for any advertising. We don't do anything here other than it's word of mouth. If you like this episode, if you found a value from what we were talking about here, please go out and share it with somebody else, because that's the only way we grow the podcast. Tommy, where else can you find the podcast?
You can find us on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. Make sure to subscribe and leave a rating. It helps us out a ton. If you have a question, idea, or a topic that you want us to talk about in a future episode, head over to FabFebTips/podcast. Leave your name and a great question. Finally, join us live every Tuesday and Thursday, 7:30 a.m. Central, and join the conversation on all of FabFebTips social media channels.
Excellent. Thank you all so much. We appreciate it, and we'll see you next time.